In this episode of Cube FM, I spoke to Ferris about his experience wrestling with Core DNS when he was working at a very large telecommunications company. Scaling the Kubernetes control plane is crucial for managing large clusters. In addition, optimizing Core DNS is essential for efficient DNS resolution and preventing incidents. Upgrading EKS clusters is also very important to stay up to date with the latest features and support. And of course, in all of this, we can't forget the critical element of good communications in teams, keeping a cool head when things go wrong, because they will, and trying to establish a blameless culture. A healthy core DNS service is critical to the performance of your Kubernetes applications. This episode is sponsored by Datadog, which provides a single platform for monitoring core DNS alongside the latest and greatest in the rest of your stack, whether it's your applications, cloud services, or infrastructure that powers it all. Check out the link that you'll find in the description below. All right, Ferris, real quick, which three emerging Kubernetes tools are catching your attention?
Yeah, the very first thing is actually I am thinking about Carpenter with a K, and it's actually a scheduler which helps schedule pods of different sizes to the different sized nodes actually. So that's one thing I'd be looking for, and the second thing is Cluster API. So that's like emerging thing which helps deploy a lot of other you know things like even VMs. You can envision it as a platform, and you can deploy, you can put a lot of thing into that. Like it's actually emerging, and a lot of use cases are emerging with that. And the third thing is I'd be thinking about using Cilium. Actually, I haven't tried yet, but that eliminates a lot of stuff, like coordinates issues, what we are going to talk about later today. So a lot of things are getting drastically changed after eBPF. Yeah, these are the things I'd be thinking.
Just to get a little bit of background information about you, can you tell us more about who you are, what you do, where you work?
My career started as a web space support uh, person. So I have worked there for around 2 years, and then I have moved on to building stuff like servers. Like we started, building infrastructure and providing that to, enterprise customers. And later I moved on to, Kubernetes. That's when, the Kubernetes native and all those things, cloud native stuff started emerging. So basically, we were, migrating a middleware shop to cloud native shop. It's like from the scratch we were building up the Kubernetes, the hard way. We didn't had EKS, AKS, all those things, on those days. So we were building things in bare metal. And I later moved on to a project where we were building the observability. So mostly it's metrics and logging. So it most of the Kubernetes clusters comes with Prometheus and Fluentd, Logstash, and it's all a small thing for some small clusters. But when it grows at scale, then that becomes a big problem. So we were working on that for last 2.5 years. Yeah. So basically, I am a middleware engineer turned into DevOps, and right now observability. And yeah, this about me.
And the Kubernetes ecosystem, moves very quickly.
Mm.
How do you stay up to date with all the changes that are going on? What works best for you? Blogs, videos, podcasts? What's best?
It's actually a mix of everything. Like I used to follow, a lot of people in LinkedIn, who share amazing contents, like Learn Creators and Mutta Nagavamsi, and a lot of people actually. So if something piques my curiosity, I'll just go and check them out. If that article is good, then I'll go dig it up in YouTube and go and look for any videos or keynote speeches. And yeah, so that's the thing. Like we just go and explore stuff, and we'll keep ourselves ahead of curve. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Ferris, if you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of career advice, one tip, what would it be?
I asked myself to, learn coding, even before, I did right now. I just started coding after, 5 years of my career. And if I thought, if I had a chance to meet my younger self, I'd ask him to do it right away, when the career starts. That's actually because of my, the work I was, doing in the first 5 years. Support guys.
Yeah, like you said, it's never too early. I think a lot of people would agree with that.
Yeah.
And all right, so as part of our monthly content discovery, we found an article that you wrote about how default settings for core DNS is going to fail. And about scaling Kubernetes
Hmm.
based on your experience that was with a real incident.
Hmm.
So before we discuss the main story, can we just cover some background? What was the setup that you were using on the Kubernetes clusters that you maintained? Can you share that?
Yeah, sure. Our Kubernetes cluster is actually a managed one. We were using EKS, which is a managed service from AWS. So we were having like 900 plus worker nodes, and we had around like 15,000 pods running on it. And actually, we were hosting an observability platform there, which was based on Victoria Metrics, not just stock Victoria Metrics. It's like a little bit modified version of it. Little minor tweaks were there. So it's like a huge one for us. That's biggest it could get uh, for us. We were initially running Thanos for some time. Very first 2 years of observability program in our project. So that went up to 500 nodes. Victoria Metrics touched 1,000 nodes, and then we consolidated it and we came back to 900 nodes. Yeah. So that's a environment we had at the time.
Hmm. And regarding monitoring and observability, Prometheus is probably going to be the name that's on everyone's lips. Yet the setup that you just described uses Victoria metrics. Do you have any insights that you could share with us on the differences you found between the two? Are there pros and cons for both? What's your take on that?
Yeah, sure. So if you're starting with telemetry, like you want to have metrics, and you want to have dashboards, nice dashboards which tell what's happening out there in your applications, you can start with Prometheus. That's a good place, very good place to start. We can do it like use your stock Helm, and you would just install Prometheus, Grafana, and everything, and it would be providing a fantastic dashboards as well, out of the stock. As scale, when you are having a scale around like you know TBs and PBs, petabytes, you'd have to scale your observability platform as well. So actually, it wasn't Victoria Metrics our first choice. We actually went from Prometheus to Thanos, which is actually an extension of Thanos. Sorry, Prometheus, and it was working well for us for some point of time. But our infrastructure was growing so huge, and we had to catch up. And there were some issues we were having with Thanos getting restarted frequently and not performing well with the R scale. So we had to improvise, and we were evaluating a lot of other things, and Victoria Metrics caught a sight, and we just went on to that. So Victoria Metrics actually hosts everything in the disk instead of doing it in S3 or somewhere. So that is one consolidation. The other thing is, we were having recording rules for Thanos, which is like we would pre-compute all the heavy metrics, and that would show faster response times in dashboards. So those things are having heavy toll on our clusters. So we were actually when we started migrating to Victoria Metrics, the response times were so much faster, and also we could reduce our costs as well. So the Victoria Metrics was storing it in disk, whereas the Thanos was storing it in S3. And it was actually we were investing some money in Thanos, but it is going to different components in Victoria Metrics. But the actual goal we were intent to solve was to make our platform stable, and to perform at scale. That's when we went for Victoria Metrics. So it's like it's not like Thanos is not performing well. It wasn't performing well for our scale, And that's when Cortex, we have evaluated Cortex as well, M3DB, but there was another team that was doing that for us. But this Victoria Metrics came out well for us, and we had to do a lot of tweakings here and there. And we were initially trying out remote write option there, where we could run an agent and then we could write it to cloud. So we had all the a lot of data centers, and we were exporting the data into AWS. And it's like all the things has to go through an ELB, and ultimately you have to pay for all the ingress data that gets into your AWS account. So that was creating huge cost for us, and we had to improvise a little there. And we moved that to AWS, using something different, which might not be revealed here because of the company. So we just send the data in, and then we'll start consuming the data, and we'll again push it to Victoria Metrics. Victoria Metrics has a lot of other components. If you are having a huge infrastructure, and you would envision a huge budget for doing that, then Victoria Metrics might be helpful for you. So if you want to use a normal 4 node cluster, and you want to have a stable monitoring system for it, a normal Prometheus and Grafana stack would be enough for you. Thinking about scale, think about Thanos and Victoria Metrics. Yeah, that's the thing I'd say.
Got it. Now, regarding Victoria Metrics, in terms of the alerting, does that provided by Victoria Metrics, or do you and the team were you using other products? And how do you usually set up the alerts on the cluster?
Yeah. So we already have an alert manager in place when we were using Thanos and Prometheus. So we were just using the same thing, but we have a component called as VM Alert in Victoria Metrics that takes care of alerting. So we have Prometheus compatible alerts that would be just running against the Victoria Metrics clusters. So it's a different component, but it does the same thing as you have with Prometheus. The same setup for Alert Manager as well. Yeah.
A robust mechanism for observing your cluster can help identify and troubleshoot issues. And I think you probably saw this firsthand when you experienced the incident, which we'll get to in a minute. But can you share what happened on that one fine day?
That was actually, we were like 3 people in our team on that day, afternoon, and the alert started coming. Like, then there is no data ingestion happening. So since it is feeding data for a lot of other downstream applications, a lot of people were consuming our APIs as well, along with the dashboards. So we were getting a lot of people saying your API is not performing, and it's like we just suddenly went into that war room mode, and we started checking all the things. And Grafana is down 500, and our API dashboard, we have it in Elk, which monitors all the queries that are being put into VM API. So we were checking that the queries count is actually 0 now. So something is happening. So we went there, and we went into the EKS cluster, and we logged in, and we could see a lot of pods are getting into crash loop back off. And there are some components that connect to EBS volumes for persisting data in the disk, and there are some components that are connecting to RDS. That's Grafana actually. So that connects to RDS. That is also not working for us. So we also noticed the node numbers. We were talking about 900 plus worker nodes, right? So that was drastically coming down. Like as the time passes by, it was going down like 50, and again 50, again 50. It was just going down, and it went around like 500 something. And the pods, most of the pods that get the data inside that cluster, those were like controlled by HPA. Those pods numbers were like around 20, usually for each site. So those things were also coming down to like 3 or 4, and that's alarming. So we were like something is happening out there, but we couldn't check anything is nothing is obvious actually. So we thought something is happening with AWS services or something. So that's a usual suspect we have, and we went ahead and we checked with AWS, and it looks like no service outage there. And what happened is, we as in, I had two other senior engineers along with me, so we were just splitting among ourselves, and we were checking each one. And the other guy was checking with the cluster pods, cluster autoscaler pods. So we were having cluster autoscaler in place that adds node as and when needed. So we were checking that. It looks like it wasn't adding anything, but it was reducing the number of nodes. So that actually had some implications. So ultimately that's happening because of metric server. So it's like it's connected to metric server because of how much memory or something is being used is being calculated by metric server. And metric server again depends on the data from the actual usage and CPU memory and everything. So it's like domino effect, and we are getting reduced number of worker nodes, and also the pods are reducing. And something is happening, we couldn't go and do anything on that. We tried adding more nodes manually, but even that was going down. So we were just checking all the other avenues. So we went to AWS as well, asked them to create a new node group, since we are not able to because of recently expired support for that particular case version. So what happened is, they also said we couldn't help on this particular case. And we actually went ahead and made that node group as uh, unscalable. How to say that, like that's like pegged at a particular number of nodes. And we started troubleshooting the rest of the things. And also for RDS, we were checking whether we are able to connect to it on the first place. We were able to connect to it from outside of the EKS. So it's like RDS is working, but not from this EKS. So another one of the colleagues were checking on the EBS, and it looks like the EBS is not connectable. It's not reachable. So it sounds like it is actually a connectivity problem on the first place, but it didn't strike to us. But we finally found out it was because of core DNS. It was just fluke. We found out it was because of core DNS, and we saw it was going into crash loop, and it had multiple restart count. It was increasing. So we just had two core DNS pods that was running in Cube system, that comes along with the default add-ons when you install a EKS. So we checked the logs, and we found out it was getting overwhelmed with all the requests that is coming in. So we thought of initially increasing the you know memory and CPU for it. But what happened is, I mean, we thought about increasing it. You can increase it, like edit and do it, but it will again go and remove the connectivity between the pods. So that will be again losing all the connectivity. So we thought we'll just increase one more pod. That would be helpful for without disrupting other pods. It will be just increasing the count of the replicas, so you will be having more connections to serve. So that is there. And so we initially increased it to 3. The services started working fine, but again it started deteriorating. The connectivity between the pods and the connectivity to RDS and volume, storage volumes, those things are also having impact. So we went ahead and increased it to 3. Went ahead and increased it to 5 instead of 3, and that started speeding up the recovery of the cluster. So basically, we had more bandwidth to serve the connectivity among the pods, and also to outside the pods. and that started recovering the whole system.
One thing, Ferris, just for our guests that are out there, people listening to this, can imagine that this is a pretty stressful situation to be
Yeah.
in terms of the panic and even chaos that's going on at this point, which a certain amount of stress can help us focus, but after a certain point it just becomes overwhelming. What was your state of mind and thought process, both yours as an individual but also with your team? What was that like, and how did you manage to get through all this?
Yeah. So our team is actually a pretty cool one, to be frank. And we were just, splitting the, responsibility among ourselves. You go and check this out, you go and check this out, and we split among ourselves and we were just checking stuff. Our director, he is a cool guy, and he said, like, I'll be on the call, I'll be there to support you. You just get the system up. So that was a freedom he has given me. I have been on other situations where they'll be put you on a gunpoint and they'll ask you to fix it right away, and that itself brings a lot of stress, and you can't focus. Even the normal commands you would run, even that will get all the typos, and it backfires all the time. So handling things cooler makes the recovery faster. That's what I'd say.
With that being said, having this cool team of very sharp individuals that handle this, what was the eventual fix? What was the solution that you agreed on? How did that come about?
The initial fix of this particular issue is increasing the CoreDNS pods. So that is a stopgap solution right away. We could do that, and the idea basically is to think about when you are going to this scale, like 1,000+ nodes, you have to start thinking about the cluster components as well. Even though EKS is a managed one, we should start thinking about how our control plane stuff like core DNS, metric servers, and all those things are scaling. You should have a tab on that, and you know, basically having a HPA would help for you. These are the things very basic stuff we would do, increasing the cluster, increasing the replicas of core DNS pods with respect to your cluster size, and also having a HPA with respect to how your cluster is going. These are the things you would just do as a stopgap things. But when you are going for proper solution, you can go think about cluster proportional autoscaler, node local DNS cache. So there are other solutions out there. So there is a good article about how to tune your core DNS in a core DNS GitHub page. Go and read that, and that will be a lot helpful for you. There are a lot of images out of core DNS they provide with respect to your queries per second. So there are a lot of tuning, the proper tuned. Actually, it was tuned for your queries per second, and there are different images out there from core DNS that would help you choose one among what is correct one for you. So there are a lot of solutions in the community. You can go and utilize that. And also what I had mentioned is most people these days are running managed service for Kubernetes. That's easier to do when you are at good scale like 100 or 200. When you are going beyond a scale for example 1,000+ nodes, you should start thinking about how to optimize your Kubernetes control plane stuff as well, even though it's a managed one. And that's a thing you have to keep in mind. Yeah.
So, it seems that, DNS is a common source of problems for a lot of folks. But in terms of this particular case, what did you and your team take away from this? What were the lessons?
Yeah. So the very first thing is we should start thinking about scaling the Kubernetes as well, like on the control plane side. So the thing we had also is we were using EKS cluster that was recently went out of support. So that played a major role when we went for AWS support, and they said like we couldn't help on this case because it just went out of support. So that's the second thing we were thinking. So we should keep on updating our clusters so often, and that should be the priority on the next quarter. So that's the thing. And the third one is like, so we had a HPA and alerting for all the other components that are running in control plane. So whenever something goes wrong with the control plane, we just go and check. Usually we never bothered about control plane stuff so far when we were running it for last 3.5 years. So, and that's the thing, key takeaways we were thinking on that.
It's interesting that you mentioned the fact of upgrading the EKS, upgrade EKS. In one of our previous episodes on the podcast, we interviewed a guy named Matt Duggan, and he talked about Kubernetes LTS and upgrades. He said that a lot of teams don't have the skills that are necessary, or sometimes they don't have the time that's necessary to keep up with Kubernetes updates, and are sometimes afraid to break stuff. What did deter you and your team from upgrading your EKS cluster?
Actually, we were migrating a lot of stuff from one version of Victoria Metrics to the other version. So we were having a parallel cluster built up, and we were in the process of switching that to in a month's time we were about to switch to that EKS cluster. Like you said, it's a huge effort to migrate from one Kubernetes versions to other. So that's actually easier handled when you are switching from one cluster to other cluster. You build another one ready and you switch the things and done. But that's not in your option when you have budget in mind. So you'd be doubling up your costs for if you're keeping that cluster around for like 1 week, that doubles your cost. So that will be coming in thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't know, it depends on your scale. So we had a privilege of having cluster that is built beforehand because of versions upgrade for the application that was running in Kubernetes. So we were able to run that and we were able to test it and we just switched things. So it's like a good thing to do. Without, if you want to go without any issues, you can just go ahead and create a parallel cluster and divert the traffic and you're done. But if you're going to do proper upgrade, like you said, that's a huge effort, and it like requires a lot of effort, and that effort can be spent on other stuff. That's what I'd say.
Now, are there any other tips or recommendations about core DNS scaling that you'd like to share with our audience?
CoreDNS, like I have said before, it's actually coming up as a coming as a add-on with EKS clusters. So it comes with a default setting of like 200 MB or something, and a little CPU, and just runs 2 replicas as a default. So you can, with your querying per second calculated in mind, you can go ahead and increase the number of replicas for yourself, or you can go ahead and add a HPA if you want it to be automated. And also you can think about using different images of core DNS, which has uh, defined settings, tunings in place for given number of queries per second. You can think about that. And also having a cluster proportional autoscaler is recommended when you have huge scale. Better go for cluster proportional autoscaler. That helps you a lot, and it on behalf of you, it just adds one more core DNS pod for n number of worker nodes that is running, or n number of CPUs that are getting added. So that helps you a lot, and you can also have a node local cache, DNS cache in place. So these are the things you can think. And also I've been reading like Cilium also helps a lot in this case, but I haven't tried it myself.
Thinking about your journey, you did mention the fact of having a good team about staying calm, but any recommendations that you would give to others that are out there about, how to not freak out, how to not panic, how to focus on the important things? Because I think that's valuable, whether it's for a problem with DNS or lots of other situations in life that might be stressful. What recommendations or strategies would you recommend? Would you share?
Yeah, so do not panic anyway. So we all tend to, but we have to, start understanding the situation, and we'll just have to, start focusing on the solution. Just write it down. That's what I do. Like uh, the first two things I just focus on. So get a ticket raised, go and check these stuff, and it just take few seconds for you. Write it down and then just go ahead and tick them out, or else you'll be just losing track of things. And if you have good teammates around, and delegate tasks to them, and they'll help you out with all the stuff. And also you can just be on a blameless, if you are fortunate to have a blameless postmortem and a blameless team, then that would help you a lot. But I like to see more of such teams. That helps a lot to get things faster in those kind of situations. Yeah.
And what was the reaction from the community to your story? What did people say?
The thought I was having while writing this is, it's just I had a lot of things in my mind. I just want to write it out and just wrote it on one day, and I was just doing corrections here and there and putting things, and we just published, and in a day or two people started noticing it. And a guy called me and he asked, like, how was your cluster going, and how you were debugging stuff, and a lot of things, a lot of conversations got started. And I have met a lot of people after that. And it's like, the one guy was telling me, like, we don't often see this much of a big issue often at this scale. So that was eye opening for me. It's like, we have seen a lot of different issues, but I just didn't had time to share it with people. So I thought maybe sharing a lot would be helpful for others to learn, and we can learn from each other. So that's the thing, like, that came to my mind. And I am really humbled after all the response I have got. Yeah. Thanks for everything.
It's great. And we've noticed that you're quite a prolific writer. What drives you? It's a lot of work.
um Thanks for that first. And actually, it's like, I tend to forget things sometimes, so I just started writing few things, because I'd come and revisit and I get refreshed. It's like a scribble notebook for me. I just started doing it in Medium, and I thought, on the sidelines, it started to be useful for other people. So that motivated me to write more and share some more stuff that would be helpful for people. So it's like, I started, I thought it would be helpful for me to write, and as a byproduct, it started helpful for other people. So it's something like that. Yeah.
It's a win-win. It's great.
Yeah.
What's next for you?
A lot of learnings are coming in. I am learning a lot of other stuff: Terraform, TerraGrunt, and cloud orchestrations and stuff. And yeah, I'll be keep writing, and I'll keep sharing things.
And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can get in touch with me in LinkedIn, and there is my mail ID as well over there in that. And you can anyway reach out to that.
Fantastic. Well, Ferris, thank you very much for your time, for sharing your
Thank you.
story, for your calmness in approaching a situation that seemed quite stressful, and look forward to reading about the things that you'll be sharing with the greater community in the future.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.